sessions. So the first of those speakers is Colby Lesko, and Colby's an Aussie fishing guide, journalist, a photographer. He's spent the last 10 years casting lures at Murray Cod. He now lives in the Murray River and spends a lot of time fishing and filming YouTube videos about Murray Cod. He's fished Murray Cod right across Australia in dams and rivers, but most at home in big surface lures on our rivers. Colby's presenting on big Murray Cod tactics in both rivers and lakes, with a focus on us, of course, in Victoria. He'll share his tips, his tactics, and locations for catching large metre plus Murray Cod. Please welcome Colby Lesko.
Thank you, and g'day everyone. Thanks to Fisheries for having me here, and thank you all for coming. First, I'll just start off a little bit about myself. I've always loved fishing, and I've always loved fish. As soon as I finished school, I didn't know what I wanted to do, but I wanted to do something to do with fish. So I went to Deakin University in Warrnambool and did a fisheries and aquaculture degree down there. Learnt heaps about fish, fish breeding, growing fish in aquaculture, and lots of cool stuff. While I did that, got the opportunity to fish a lot while I was at uni. And as I fished more and more, I just realised it was fishing that I love, and kind of transitioned from uni into a bit of fishing guiding, a bit of fishing social media stuff, and that's kind of led me through to where I am today. I do a bit of stuff on YouTube. I still do like a little bit of fishing guiding and stuff as well, but mostly I just like to be out on the water as many days as I can a year. And I still really do have a passion for all the fisheries management side of things and fisheries science. And I think days like today are great because we can all learn so much about fish and our fisheries. So thanks for having me. My presentation that I've put together is just going to be about Murray Cod fishing with lures in Victoria and right across Australia. Where? The whole Murray-Darling Basin. They're massively widespread. Queensland, New South Wales, Victoria, ACT and SA. There's just so many different fisheries to explore. As you can see here, these are just a few of the different environments that cod are found in. Lake Mulwala, crystal clear waters of Googong Dam, the mighty Murray River, the dirty Darling River, the Edwards River, the crystal clear waters of the King River. There's just so many different fisheries and different places to explore. And now in Victoria, we even have some waters that are not in the Murray-Darling Basin, like Rocklands and Melton Reservoir as well. So there's plenty of places you can go chase a cod and plenty of different environments you can do it in. When? So we've got a year-round fishery for cod now with the lakes open, which is great. It's an awesome option to do during spring, whilst all the rivers still do have the closed season. For me, I like to focus my cod fishing schedule kind of around a winter and summer and the warmer months of the year, and then the cooler months of the year. So when I'm fishing during summer or the warmer months of the year, I'm generally focused on catching smaller fish. This is when the smaller fish are most active. This is when you can get the most bites in a day. You can go out and catch really good numbers of fish. Generally, they're a little bit smaller, and generally this is in the faster flowing systems. The reason why I chase the cod in the faster flowing systems over the summer months is because it's better for the fish. You got that water turnover. You don't get that really hot, stagnant layer in the top. The water is a pretty consistent temperature right through the water column, so it's pretty good for the fish to be caught. And then also you get the best fishing in these smaller systems during summer. I really find once you get those really frosty mornings and it gets really cold, these smaller systems like you got here, this is the Upper Goulburn and the King River. These systems do get really cold and the fish seem to shut off over that winter period. You can still catch them. You've got to go super slow and you get really low numbers of fish. Whereas over the warmer months of the year, you can head out to the King and you can have a 10 fish session. It's really good fishing. And these are an awesome time to explore these waters. Also a great spot if you want to come across a trout cod one day. A lot of these rivers have got trout cod in them and they're coming back more and more. And this is the type of water that the trout cod love. Fast flowing, clear waters, and that's the time of year to do it. So the other period is over the cooler months of the year and winter. Definitely less fish and less bites, but they're generally bigger fish. Here we've got a couple of Eildon fish, and this is the time of year that I really love to chase the big fish, and I really love to target these big bodies of water, the bigger rivers and the lakes, and use a bigger lure to catch these monsters. I do most of my fishing during this time of year because I really like to chase the big fish. So if you're after a big one, focus your fishing efforts around this time of year. Whereas if you just want to get out there and catch a cod, I'd suggest you focus your fishing efforts around the summer period of the year. We now also have some great springtime options, Eildon, Rocklands. It's a great time to be out on the lakes still cod fishing. As you can see here, this is an Eildon fish and this is a Hume yellow belly. Best part about spring is you can combine the two. The yellow belly fishing is amazing during spring. So you can head out, fish for cod for a couple of hours in the morning in the lakes, and then you can transition into yellow belly fishing and have some really good yellow belly fishing right throughout spring. River tactics. So I fish a lot in rivers and a lot in the lakes. I like to mix it up. It's great to fish in the two and compare the two, and you learn heaps about different stuff and different techniques. So in the rivers, I'll say they're very dynamic. It's always changing. Depends on the flows, upstream, rain events, irrigation. There's no set time. You can plan a trip on the river and say, I'm going to go here and I'm going to do this, because you could get a lot of rain or an irrigation release, and it can make it very difficult in the rivers. With the rivers, it's very structure-based fishing. So the cod love the big laydown logs in the rivers. They love the deeper bends of the rivers and the big, deeper holes. So these bigger fish like this one here will have a nice big snag on the river that they spend the majority of their time on. And when you're fishing, you really want to target these big snags. You need clearer water for the fish to see your lure, because I'm always lure fishing. They really do need to see your lure, the cod. Yellow belly you can catch in really dirty water, but I find if the water is super dirty, the cod just can't simply find your lure, and you just seem to get no bites at all if it's really dirty. You kind of need 100 mils of clarity at least. A foot of clarity is ideal for the rivers. This generally comes along with low flows as well. Low flows are a great period. The more predictable where the fish are going to be, and it brings the clearer water. And the cooler water is great in the rivers because it does bring them closer to the surface, and that makes them easier to catch. So I target the snags in the river. I target the deep bends, the areas of flow where that comes into a pool or comes out of a pool. I like to use reaction lures in the river. That just means stuff with a lot of thump, a lot of action, a lot of shine, like a spinnerbait. It makes it easier for the fish to find your lure in the rivers, and it is often dirtier water in the rivers. Here I've just got a screenshot of the river flows for the Murray River. This is put out by the Murray-Darling Basin Authority. Anyone can get on this page and have a look. And it just gives you a bit of a snapshot of the system. Shows you what the river's flowing and where. So if you have a really good session on the river, you can jump on here, have a look at what the flow is, and then, you know, for in the future, if the river's back flowing this same pace, it's probably going to mean some good fishing. It takes a lot to learn this stuff. It does have a bit of information on the other rivers as well, and if you search online, you can find more again. But yeah, a really handy tool to have. With the lake tactics, the fish are definitely a lot more predictable than the rivers. Generally, you can head out to Eildon any day of the year and have a really good shot at catching a big Murray cod. The water's always clear. It does go up and down a little bit. Doesn't affect its fish too much at all. It's a massive body of water, so yeah, you can get out there, chase them any time of the year, and you can always find a spot out of the way to get out of the way of people. But in the lakes, you definitely want to focus on bait-rich areas during the prime times. The lake fish are really pelagic compared to river fish, and it amazes me the distances the cod will swim between day and night in these lakes such as Eildon. When I was at Eildon earlier this year, I found a stack of fish right up in this shallow bay. No structure whatsoever, just a mud flat with heaps of carp. Loads of big cod would just move up into this bay at night to feed on the carp in the shallows, and then you would go through this bay during the day and you would not see a single fish. One of the benefits of live sonar these days is you can see what the actual fish are doing, where they're going and how they're behaving. And yeah, with the live sonar, the bay was just loaded full of fish and carp all night. As soon as that sun popped up, you'd watch the fish go down lower, mooch along the bottom, move out into 10 metres of water, and then they'd just vanish off into the depths of the lake. They wouldn't be back there until 10 o'clock the next night. It's amazing how much they move. They definitely do this a lot in the lakes, and they'll just move to wherever the most food is, whether that be carp, redfin, bony brim. If you can find an area of the lake that's got heaps of bait fish activity, chances are the cod will move in there at some stage to feed. Generally around the prime times of dusk and dawn, but right throughout the night, especially if the water's clear. So the clear water makes them very bite time specific. You do have to do a fair bit of fishing in the dark. As you see, these lake fish are all right around that first light period or last light period. I like to use more natural lures in the lake, like a big soft plastic or a swim bait. Because the water is so clear, the fish will see your lure from a fair way away. Usually they can see it for 3-4 metres away in Eildon. So you don't need the big thump or flash of a spinnerbait. A soft plastic is enough to attract them, and then that looks exactly like what they're feeding on, a bait fish, and they will come and eat that. I found that is quite often better, but not necessarily always the case. Sometimes during the summer periods, something with a lot of flash and thump, like a spinnerbait, can be really good in the dams too. So it pays to mix it up a little bit. The gear for targeting these bigger fish, I'm generally always targeting metre plus fish these days. So I generally do use some fairly heavy gear to throw the big lures. Usually a 7 to 8 foot light swim bait rod is what I use with a 300 size bait caster reel. Bait caster is just a lot easier to cast all day. I spool that up with 50 pound braid, and that goes to a 60 to 80 pound leader. Generally 80 pound if I'm fishing in the river and there's a lot of flow, a lot of activity around the snags, whereas in the dams you can drop right down to maybe 50, 40 pound leader. There's not that much flow that the fish will get you in the snags, and then generally you're not fishing where there's heaps of snags anyway in the lakes. So that's the gear that I use. You don't necessarily need this heavier gear for the cod, but if you're going to be casting a lure all day, it definitely helps to have a nice heavy rod to cast the lure and doesn't fatigue the angler. Touched on it a bit already, but I'll talk about the lures. So lures, my natural kind of lure is just a soft plastic there, like that redfin one that fish is caught on. Very subtle action, doesn't have too much flash or thump whatsoever. It's just got a light paddle tail, and this is what I'll use in the clearer waters, like Eildon, even the King River and stuff where the water's very clear and you don't have to get your lure right on top of the fish. You can kind of cast that into the hole or bring it above the fish, and the fish will see that and come out and eat it thinking it's another fish. When you're fishing in the rivers and the water's a lot dirtier, that's when I'll go for like a spinnerbait, something with a lot of thump and flash, something that you can really cast into the snags, let it flutter down right into the fish's face. If you only got a foot of clarity, I really want to try and get that lure within a foot of the fish's head. So I want to throw it right into the snags, let it flutter down, go really, really slow, and hopefully that drawing power of the flash and the thump will bring the fish out of his snag and he'll come and eat it. So that's my general go-to with the lures. You can mix it up a little bit and try different things. On the right day, everything will work different, but generally if the water's clear, I'll go for the natural options. If the water's dirty, I'll go for the reaction options. Surface, Lubin touched on it a bit in his chat as well. Surface is my number one way to fish for cod. As you saw on Lubin's video, it's just amazing. These fish can be so tough to catch for such long periods of time. They just sulk in their snags. Even with the live technology, now you can roll your lure over top of 20 massive fish for the night at Eildon and they all just ignore you, and it can be incredibly frustrating. And then it's just like somebody flicks a switch and they just come up from 3 meters down and destroy a surface paddler, and it's just amazing. Amazes me every time they do it. I don't know why it makes them so angry, but it does. And I've found it's got a great ability to fool the big fish, the surface as well. I don't know if it's they can't quite get a really good look at a surface paddler or not, but yeah, definitely if you want to target bigger fish, it's a great option. One of my favorite options, and I love watching them eat the surface. But the number one thing that's going to get you a big Murray cod, if you really want to catch a big one like this, is persistence. There's just nothing else that can compare to persistence and being out on the water. You can have all the right gear, be in all the right spots, do all the right things, and the fish can just simply not be on. And this can be the case for 2 or 3 days in a row, and then the weather will change, something will change, and the fish will just switch on, and they'll all have a feed, and you can get a shot at a massive fish like this. I still find it happens to me heaps. I can go out for, 1 or 2 days, get absolutely nothing, and then have all my action in a 24-hour period. Super unpredictable. Sometimes you can predict it around the moon. Sometimes you can predict it around the weather system. Other times I can't explain it at all. It's really tough, and then it can be really good. But I do know is if you go out and you persist and keep doing the right things, it eventually always happens. I'll just touch a little bit on fish handling as well. I know Leuben's already touched on this, so I'll go through it quickly. But just try and keep them as wet as possible. If you're fishing in those summertime periods, just be aware that usually that top foot of water is a lot hotter than what's underneath. So even if you're holding them in the water, it's not necessarily great for the fish. It's better to just reduce the time completely, get the hooks out, let it go as quick as possible. But just do what you can. I know you can't get in the water with them in every scenario, but if you can, it's a great option, certainly in the rivers. Be ready to remove the hooks with pliers and cutters. I'll just briefly touch on if you actually hooked inside the fish's gill filaments, it's best to just cut that hook off. Don't try and remove it, because when you do, a lot of blood will come out. If you can get the pliers in there, just cut the hook point off completely, leave it in there. That'll come out in its own time, come out and scab up, and hopefully it'll be a lot better for the fish. As you can see, this other fish here is just hooked in a little bit of skin, so that's fine. You can remove that hook. It's not going to bleed out of there. But if they are hooked in the gills, just be super careful. It can mean the difference between the fish's life. Another important factor is try and get them out of the net or get the lure out of them in the net as quick as possible, because as you know, once the big cod's in the net and it's got the lure on the side of its face, the first thing they do is roll around and tangle your net up. And what that does is can get one treble in the net, one treble in the fish, and as it rolls up, it really tightens, puts a lot of pressure on their jaw and does a lot of damage to their jaw. That's why you see a lot of fish that have been caught before do have that kind of joker jaw with the ripped out jaw, so it's best to just get those hooks out as quick as possible. Everybody loves a big cod tail, so I just thought I'd put up these photos of this is my biggest Murray cod that I've caught in the Murray River below Yarrawonga. This was just standard old morning, already been fishing for a couple of days, not much action at all, but got up at first light again. I think this was in May, great time of the year to be on the water for big fish. Got up, just did the same process I'd done the previous 2 days, same location, a snag on the river I'd fished a bunch of times before, just casting my surf lure around at first light at the big old logs on the deep bend of the river, and this giant one came out and ate it on first light. I didn't get a measurement of it because I was just super excited and just wanted to get quick, good photos of the fish and then let it go. My mate that was with me did a really quick measurement. The bragman only went to 120, but he said it was about 130. But yeah, just incredible condition on this fish and a massive great tail on it. The tail was like the size of a basketball. But it just goes to show that I never thought this fish would be living there, but they are living there, and he must have seen a bunch of lures in his lifetime. But you just got to be in the right place at the right time, and yeah, you'll fool them. And it's an amazing feeling when you get one this size. I think we're going to leave the questions to the end, or yeah, no worries. All right, well, thanks for having me, guys, and I think we're going to do some questions all together at the end.